next door, when they were renovating that, I'm going to show you what they did here. They made holes here when they were renovating your apartment, you see? And the kitchen has to be painted.
I think what he's trying to do is get the rest of the old tenants out of here. That's what he wants to do. So he's making it miserable for us.
It's a sad thing that's happening in her building. New landlords are coming in and taking over this industry. They're leaving us poor people behind.
See, they're called slumlords, those kind of men.
No, I don't think I'm a slumlord. I'm going to want to paint a very different picture about what happened at the building during our ownership of it.
It changed really a lot when Peter came, like a lot, because especially after Miss Smith died, like the building just like fell apart when she died. Like the building left with her.
I first moved to Harlem to attend graduate school. But as a student, I couldn't afford to move anywhere else in New York. And as I learned more about the history and the society and the people of Harlem, I also realized that I came into a history that I didn't know existed. A history of my own apartment, apartment 2C.
Apartment 2C was a very happy place. There was a lot of joy.
That's because it was the apartment of Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith bought the building in 1950 after getting married, and she ran it for over 50 years. I became curious. Just who was this Mrs. Smith?
Always smiling. Yeah. I don't think I ever saw her frowning.
Never. Never.
And Mrs. Smith didn't take nonsense from nobody.
It was always, hello, Mrs. Smith.
Even in the offices, they call her Margie and they call me Ann, but she was always Mrs. Smith.
That was Ms. Smith's favorite spot.
And what would she do every day?
To sit out here and hang out.
She had very sophisticated gray hair.
And she always had it fixed up too, because she never came outside without her hair being fixed.
Everybody around here knows her. Everybody.
And years ago, they used to have a block association, and she used to be the, what did you say, the president of it.
As she got older, it became more difficult to run and manage the building. So she decided to sell it.
Well, we decided to sell the building because really, financially, we really could not afford it. Taxes had gone up so much. Water bill was very, very high. Peter was the one who was willing to bargain with us and work with us. So that's how we sold it to him. Plus, somehow my mother thought he was a nice person.
Something would happen that would shock this entire community.
Oh, God.
Mrs. Smith would suddenly pass away, with only a week in between the sale of the building and her passing.
I went to her wake. About many people from the whole block went to her wake. It was sad, you know.
By now, Peter was already in charge, and things changed dramatically.
It started to become tense, I think, after we started to employ some of our management practices in the building.
What was this difference between Mrs. Smith and Peter, and why were things so different?
She didn't run it like a landlord. She ran it more as like a friend.
They wouldn't actively collect rents. They wouldn't actively make repairs. They were very passive. They traded off almost as if they traded off their having a relationship with the tenants in the building for timely rent payments and the obligation to make repairs.
I just was talking with Mrs. Smith before she died. She was gonna let us sublet the apartment on the first floor because my mother, it was easier for her because there's no elevator in this building, and it was easier to get her in and out of the building, in and out of for her appointments. Now she lives on the third floor. We have to literally find somebody to carry her down. The stairs here are they're not easy stairs to go up and down. And lifting that wheelchair is the worst thing. He understood the situation, but it was all about money. He never came up here to visit, but he would be in the building. And he told me he was gonna give me one of the apartments, but he wanted to raise her rent up to, you know, something that she couldn't afford at all. And I said, no, I can't do that. So now she's here all the time. See, on a beautiful day like today, we could have been out on the stoop.
I felt like I was no stranger to these people, even though I may not have met any of them face to face. Mrs. Smith spent a lot of time telling me a lot of detail about each person in the building.
What the heck did he do here? Putting all those nice people out and giving them such stress and aggravation.
You had a lot of seniors that had lived here a long time. And then here you are now offering them a couple of $1,000s and telling them, well, if you don't sign, you know, I could get the apartment anyway.
Not only is it not true, but they willingly left and were compensated for doing so.
Mr. Nash would have never left here. If it was up to him, that man would have not left here.
I mean, Mr. Nash approached me. His sister called me.
My son, my older son, would go buy him the newspaper every day, you know, bring him coffee. So for him to move from a situation like that, I don't think he would.
He had a lot of emotion about doing it, but he was very happy to get the compensation he got. As a matter of fact, his sister called me several weeks later after he'd moved out and just wanted to thank me again from the bottom of her heart.
People weren't happy. He didn't want a community.
Well, we made repairs actively. We spent a lot of money improving the property.
That is not true, you know, because a lot of them, well, from what I heard, a lot of the monies that he claims he used in renovating, he didn't. So a lot of it's false.
And we were very active in collecting money, and when we didn't get money, we were very active in enforcing our rights to collect the money, and that included sending 10-day notices, written demands for collection, sometimes going to court. But that's within the law and the entitlement of the managing agent or landlord of the property.
She's probably slapping him when he goes to bed at night, you know, for being so mean.
I think she would have been very happy and very proud and very pleased with what we had done with the property.
As I continue to live in apartment 2C, I realize that I'm living in the shadows of a Mrs. Smith. I also realize that so much of Harlem is changing.
To me, the city is not for the small people anymore.
There's always a good bit of tension between a new owner of a neglected property and the tenants who have lived there for a long time.
And it has big impact on the people who have been here for generations. And it is also true that the memory of Mrs. Smith still remains strong, even with Peter.
She struck me as a very humble and old soul, not old in age, but in spirit.
I'll just sing a few words. A few dedicated to Mrs. Dorothy Smith. How much do I love you? I'll tell you no lie. How deep is the ocean? How high is the sky? How many times a day do I think of you? How far would I travel to be where you are? How far is the journey from here to a star? And if I